Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Therapist Plays Stanley Parable. And once again, this community has not failed to recommend just the perfect material for what we love to talk about on this channel, which is quite a variety of things. But generally, how do we make decisions under extreme stress and within the constraints of complicated relationships? And yeah, so far Stanley has given me plenty to talk about in both of those areas. And if this is your first series with the channel, I hope you enjoy my weird blend of often chaotic roleplay, genuinely informative psychological lessons, and a touch of sincerity on what we can learn from these experiences and how to apply them so that we can all live better, happier lives. So with that all said, I hope you enjoy this first episode of Therapist Plays Stanley Parable. All right, it's time. It's time to see the parable. I know basically nothing about this game. I just know that it's like one of these classic subversive type games. So I'm coming in fresh. Let's see what we get.
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427.
Oh, God.
Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he pushed buttons on a keyboard. Orders came to him through a monitor on his desk, telling him what buttons to push, how long to push them, and in what order. This is what employee 427 did every day of every month of every year. And although others might have considered it soul-rending, he relished every moment that the orders came in, as though he had been made exactly for this job. And Stanley was happy.
Okay.
And then one day, something very peculiar happened. Something that would forever change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget. He had been at his desk for nearly an hour when he realized that not one single order had arrived on the monitor for him to follow. No one had showed up to give him instructions, call a meeting, or even say hi. Never in all his years at the company had this happened, this complete isolation. Something was very clearly wrong. Shocked, frozen solid, Stanley found himself unable to move for the longest time. But as he came to his wits and regained his senses, he got up from his desk and stepped out of his office.
Okay, so I immediately have a bit of a psychological profile that I'm sort of building of the character just from what we heard just now. Because it's really interesting what they were describing, like what it's like to work in this this office sounds boring as hell. But Stanley seems to prefer this. Now, there is actually something interesting that we can tell about his character. So in most cases, what determines boredom for people, when we're engaging in something that takes a certain amount of ability from us, and that task has a certain amount of challenge to it, how we feel about the task is going to change depending on like where these things are at. And typically what you experience if you have very low ability to do something, but the challenge is very high, right? This is what tends to create feelings of anxiety, right? Something is difficult. I don't have the skills to deal with it, or I will anticipate I don't have the skills to deal with it. And so I start like stressing out. On the other hand, when our abilities to do something are very high and the challenge is very low, we tend to experience boredom, right? We're way overqualified for the thing. And so in both of these quadrants, you will see a lot of like people's experience at work coming through, right? Like if you are an overworked person who, if we're talking ability, maybe you haven't been trained well enough to do the task that you have to do, or you don't have enough time to do it, and that makes the challenge higher, anxiety goes up, right? If the stuff that you have to do is just sort of tedious, like typing things in and following commands, like most people, you know, they want to use their abilities. Like that's fun, that's fulfilling for most people. When the challenge isn't that high, we actually tend to be very like understimulated. And so like fulfillment, you know, whether we're talking in like workplace or sports or athleticism or like creativity, it's going to exist somewhere here where your abilities are met by the level of challenge from the task. So it's interesting that like Stanley, as far as we can tell, seems to actually enjoy being in this zone. Why? Why might someone actually prefer limited stimulation and be somewhat confused or like wary of situations that call for like a little more depth and challenge and access to your actual skill set? Why might we be this way? Let's find out. Okay, can we do anything with the computer? No. All right, doesn't seem anyone else is here.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo. No matter how hard Stanley looked, he couldn't find a trace of his co-worker. Stanley went around touching every little thing in the office, but it didn't make a single difference, nor did it advance the story in any way.
Hey, I don't like this. Being observed. You don't want me to touch stuff, huh? God damn it. This is another one of these games that's activating my defiance. Like when I'm told to do a certain thing, it sort of activates my curiosity to do something different. Partially due to my like personal style in this sort of situation, right? Like I really enjoy like, you know, having something to chew on. That's why I like psychology and therapy. Like the challenge is very high and it always pushes me to, you know, increase my ability. When the challenge is potentially too high, like that's how I know, oh, I need to get better at this. When the challenge is too low, okay, I need to like potentially complicate things. When I'm given like clear instructions in a game, I get the urge that it's like, hey, take a load off. We'll make the decisions for you. And I feel it pulling me this way. So I'm like, okay, let's complicate things. Let me do something different. Like, let's see how difficult I can make this. So that's kind of how I...
Please. Are you really just doing this for the achievement? 5 times? Is that all that you think it is worth? No. I can't just give these merits away for such little effort. A measly 5 clicks. Now suppose you were to click the door 20 times. I would say that's the kind of effort that warrants recognition.
Okay, yeah, exactly like I'm talking about. Like I'll be overproductive to things if I find that they're too simplistic.
I have to say, I'm still not feeling the satisfaction effort for a noble cause. Perhaps 50 clicks will do it. Yes, almost certainly 50 clicks.
And when a sufficient challenge is put in my direction, I tend to respond with like, okay, let me like, you know, increase my ability here. Like I'll sort of lock into it and see if I can max it out. There's got to be something.
No, I'm still not feeling it. I want this achievement to have meant something. It has to be a true reward for valiant effort. I want to see some hustle, Stanley. I want to see commitment, a willingness to go all the way, no matter what the cost. Why don't you go put 20 clicks into door number 417?
Oh, okay. You want me to do that, so I'm not going to do it now. I find that, like, yeah, it creates a push and pull with me. But I also have to keep in mind, like, for those of you who are new to this channel, part of this is like Brady's decisions. I will like make certain cases for my own behavior just because it's fun to sort of demonstrate stuff like this. But for the most part, I try to get into like the mindset of my character, right? And in this sense, like I want to be like, fuck off, narrator. Like I'm not gonna go do that now. You're just messing with me. But like for Stanley, the reason I was getting at potentially preferring to live here is because like when you have to make your own decisions, when you have to apply your own abilities without like someone else to set the limit for you on what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to do it, you'd prefer that because like you don't necessarily have a very clear understanding of that, which means like more capacity for getting it wrong. Like in that sense, we may rather be bored out of our minds safely than know that like applying ourselves creates the condition for failure, which paralyzes us. So if you are the type of person who struggles to be ambitious, despite having like rationale that you want to be ambitious about something, yeah, it could have something to do with just your hesitation to apply yourself the wrong way. So what did he say? 417. I think Stanley. The challenge is going up here for Stanley. We're starting to get anxious. There's no people around. Okay. I don't know what to do. I'm not getting any orders. I got to go find the door. That's the last thing that I was told. That's how I imagine Stanley being. I can't find it. Oh, here we go.
Great. Now, go click a few times on door 437.
No, this is the uncertainty. Wait, isn't that the fucking door that I started on? No, I'm not sure. There's got to be something else. There's got to be something else going on here. And I'm going to let Stanley sort of lead the way on this. He's a rule follower. I won't have to make my own decisions.
I think we're getting somewhere. Now,
oh, thank goodness.
415. Let's give it 10 clicks or so.
Yes, I'll do anything that you say, mysterious narrator. So at this point, like, because of the rapid shifting in direction, I'm no longer feeling like, oh, I'm just being good given simple directions, like, that are within my scope. Sitting down at the computer, like, that's probably, yeah, within my ability. But, like, running around, clicking on stuff isn't.
Two open doors. He entered the door on his left.
That isn't something I imagine Stanley to be very good at, which is, like, yes, he can follow directions, but, like, new directions? Ones where he's not really sure, like, what applying himself to them will do, starting to create more anxiety for us. When we have anxiety, we will tend to compensate for it, right? We'll respond by trying to pull ourselves in the other direction, usually by getting some, like, more information about a problem. And if we can't get any more information, we'll usually tend to just avoid it. Which I'm going to step back into Brady's head now here. I know this is maybe not the most consistent, like, decision-making tree. That's not really what I'm out here to do. I'm mostly out here to demonstrate psychological principles. So Brady looks at this and says, yeah, like, when I start falling down here, like, I need more challenge. And right now I find the thing causing me the most friction is this narrator character who seems to believe that he can predict everything that I'll do. And by this point, I can already tell that maybe he wants me to do the opposite of what he says so that he can chide me for it. Actually, fine. I'm gonna go left. How about that? Didn't expect that, did you? Didn't expect that I would just listen.
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there.
How to solve a dispute with a coworker. Let it ball up inside you, take it out passive-aggressively on them, and resent them for not supporting you more. Okay. Yes, I feel very unique in this environment, as I do in all corporate spaces.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
No, I don't think I will this time. I'm actually curious what's down here in the scary basement.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss. Admitting he had left his post during work hours, he might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. all of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all? None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down? Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever he went? And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they?
Yes.
No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be
What?
real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it.
What the hell?
Dreaming! He yelled. This is all a dream. Oh, what a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all.
God, it's just the same fucking room.
Up soon, I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So, he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground.
What?
Then he imagined himself soaring through space on a magical starfield, and it too appeared. It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking?
I don't
The
know.
voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought. And while he thought it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be?
Of course it's not a fucking dream.
Deceiving himself? Believing that if he's asleep, he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley.
If it wasn't a dream, he'd have to accept that he'd actually have to do something.
That this was, in fact, a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself, too. Surely, if he could just...
Stop.
He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control.
Shut up.
That this was a dream. So he closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up, he thought to himself. I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want. I want my apartment, and my wife, and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been. My life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine. I am okay.
Freak out.
Stanley began screaming. Please, someone, wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am...
Yeah.
Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone...
Ah!
And everything went black. This is the story of a woman named Mariella.
What?
Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk.
We're not Stanley anymore?
Soon turned to go call for an ambulance. For just a few brief moments, she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy. This much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, And in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day. The very important people whose impressions on her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
Okay. So, as I wanted to demonstrate as that was playing out, you can see that, like, when I said people compensate, we either try to do two things in response to anxiety. We either try to change the situation, or we try to change how we feel about the situation. So Stanley couldn't change the situation, right? He sort of tried with, like, closing his eyes and imagining he was in a dream and, like, forcing that to try to bring his anxiety down. But then he started to try to change how he feels, like the sort of, like, affirmations, like, that he was giving himself, like, I'm fine, this is all just a dream, like the sort of self-soothing, right? That it actually did help to bring his anxiety down. And you can clearly see that he was like, I just want to go back to my boring life, right? So the model fits until he realized that that didn't work and this isn't working. And so we freaked the fuck out. So let's see how, was it Mariana? Fits into this as well. Oh. Perhaps we work in the same space as Stanley.
Workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
We're just Stanley again. I guess that was the end of Stanley's life. Okay. Probably it was, like, going down in the basement. So again, I'm Stanley, right? Do we know, are we aware that we're here again?
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Okay, I always sort of get stuck here with these, like, meta-contextual games where I'm like, does Stanley know that he went left last time? I can't help but know that we went left last time. And so maybe we go right. Maybe we don't go right. What am I doing? It's not like either of these fucking choices matter.
This was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it.
Why don't I try clicking on the doors again? That's like the most exciting thing that we did so far. This makes me feel more like I'm at my day job. Just clicking away, just doing the thing. There we go. Now I feel extremely bored, which makes me feel very, very comfortable.
Yes, truly a room worth admiring. It had really been worth the detour after all, just to spend a few moments here in this immaculate, beautifully constructed room. Stanley simply stood here, drinking it all in.
No, I can't just stand and drink. I am kind of an anxious person.
Really, really worth it being here in the room. A room so utterly captivating that even though all your co-workers have mysteriously vanished, here you sit looking at these chairs and some paintings. Really worth it.
I'm really more of a restless person. Like, I have a hard time not sitting still. I can sit still for a long time, but
Stanley's obsession with this room bordered on creepy. It did poorly on his overall personality. It's possible that this is why everyone left.
I tend to I associate like problem solving, like changing the situation with like kind of being in motion.
Dialogue. But when a long time had passed and there was no more, he decided that the game was trying to send him a message.
Game? What game? This game? Oh, okay, I see how it is. What, you're not gonna say anything new? You're just gonna comment on me being here? Is that it? Okay.
But
Guess I'll move.
he'd had enough of the amazing room and took the first open door on his left to get back to business.
No, fuck that. What's here? What's this?
Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, just because Stanley likes to follow directions doesn't mean that he's particularly good at following directions. Which we haven't been so far. There's also a little bit of like, yeah, this idea of decision fatigue, like that, like the quality of your decisions, like, is usually pretty good when you don't have to make a ton of them, but like goes down when you have to make a lot of them. Like this just kind of becomes sort of fatiguing, and then like we tend to make worse decisions, partially because like we end up here, right, in this sort of like anxious zone. This looks kind of abstract. What's going on here? I don't like making decisions. As Stanley, I can jump off.
Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy, really, I'm not. I realize that investing your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the fact is that the story has been about nothing but you all this time.
Oh.
Someone you've been neglecting, Stanley. Someone you've forgotten about.
Maybe that's why we're having an uncomfortable feeling.
Trying to make every decision by yourself. Now, I'm not asking for me, I'm asking for her.
We don't like being the main character. Stanley doesn't.
This is it, Stanley. Your chance to redeem yourself. To put
What?
your work aside. To let her back into your life.
Who?
She's been waiting.
Who is she? What am I missing? Who's this? What?
That's her, Stanley. You need to be the one to do this. To reach out to her. If you can truly place your faith in another, then pick up the phone.
I don't know what's gonna happen when I do that. I'm starting to get really stressed here. Can I? What if I unplug it? Can I unplug it?
Picked up the phone. A white light engulfed him, filling him not just with radiance, but with hope.
I didn't pick up the phone.
Reunited one... Wait. Oh, goodness. Stanley, did you just unplug the phone? No, that wasn't supposed to be a choice. How did you do that? You chose incorrectly. I didn't even know that was possible. Let me double check. No, it's definitely here, clear as day. Stanley picks up the phone,
No.
is taken to his apartment where he finds his wife, and the two pledge themselves to one another. Music comes in, fade to white, roll credits.
I just want my
Up the phone.
boring life.
Somehow an incorrect course of action. How is that even possible? None of these decisions were supposed to mean anything. I don't understand. How on earth are you making meaningful choices? What did you... Wait a second. Did I just see... No, that's not possible. I can't believe it. How had I not noticed it sooner? You're not Stanley. You're a real person.
What?
I can't believe I was so mistaken. This is why you've been able to make correct and incorrect choices.
Oh, okay.
Run around in this game for so long. If you'd made any more wrong choices, you might have negated it entirely. It's as though you completely ignored even the most basic safety protocol for real-world decision-making. Or did you not grasp the severity of the situation? Well, I won't have that kind of risk on my watch. I'm going to stop the game for a moment so we can educate you properly on safe decision-making in the real world. Please observe this helpful instructional video.
Hey.
Choice. It's the best part of being a real person. But if used incorrectly, can also be the most dangerous. For example, in this scenario, a hypothetical real person named Rupert has a choice. He could invent a machine that eliminates food shortages across the world to make life better for all people. Or he could spend years of hard work forgetting how to read. Which choice would you make? Remember that unlike here, the real world makes sense, and at no time should you make a choice that does not conform to rational logic. If you find yourself speaking with a person who does not make sense, in all likelihood, that person is not real. Allow the person to finish their thought, then provide an excuse why you cannot continue talking. Turn to a partner and practice saying, "My goodness, is it 4:30? I'm supposed to be having a back, sack, and crack." Excellent. Making choices on a regular basis is the best part to a healthy decision-making process. Most medical professionals recommend making at least 8 choices per day.
Oh my God.
More than 8? Less?
There's no way.
Finally, if you begin to wonder if your choices are actually meaningful and whether you'll ever make a significant contribution to the world, just remember that in the vast infiniteness of space, your thoughts and problems are materially insignificant, and the feeling should subside. At this time, your instructor will guide you in an exercise to test and reinforce the material covered in this video.
Is that right?
Welcome back. You may have noticed that this room has begun to deteriorate as a result of narrative contradiction. But not to worry. Now that you're properly informed on good decision-making, we're going to revisit a choice you made just a few minutes ago and see what the correct thing to do would have been. This way, please.
So, like, it seems that, yeah, my interfacing with the game is to roleplay as Stanley, the narrative's sort of surrogate for us playing the game. But the game seems to be aware that it is just a roleplay for me, and that some of my decisions were not actually characteristic of Stanley. Stanley likes to follow directions. Brady's fine following directions. But I do have to feel like my choices are meaningful. You know, it's not enough for me to be given like a what and a how, like this is what you're supposed to do and here's how you're supposed to do it. I have to have a why. It's partially why my like specialty in therapy is like kind of gravitated around existential approaches, like narrative. I need a why. What's happening here? What am I doing? What does it all mean? What is it all for? Like, am I trying to beat the game? Am I trying to outsmart the narrator? Am I trying to just make decisions that feel like they are my own? Any or all of these objectives would at least bring me some comfort to know that I'm going in the right direction. Or perhaps maybe my goal is just to experience.
We can't have you jumping off the platform and dying. Imagine the main character dying senselessly halfway through the story.
I don't like that. You took away a choice of mine.
At all. We just need to get you home as soon as possible before the narrative contradiction gets any worse. Unfortunately, it seems this place is not well equipped to deal with reality.
Kidding me? I can't just... You can see that my impulse is like, again, to sort of like try to deconstruct something. If the meaning is not clear, I will sort of try to break something apart until it becomes clear. Okay. Back in the fucking office. The fucking lounge.
Almost there. You'll take the door on the left, back to the correct ending, the story will have resolution once again, and you'll be home free in the real world.
Whatever. I can stop anytime I want. In fact, I can even make my own choice.
All you need to do is behave exactly as...
To do what you tell me.
That means choosing responsibly and always putting the story first. I'm quite sure you'll be up to the task. Just follow my lead and you'll be fine. All right. When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left. No! Why did you do that? Quickly, hurry back in the other direction. Perhaps we're not too late.
Seriously?
Oh, it's ruined. I can't believe, after everything we talked about, that my story, you've destroyed my work. Why? For what? What did you get out of that? What did you
Agency.
Seeing the game undone, left here like so much garbage, it's worthless now.
No, it's
Supposed to do.
it's beautiful.
Were a way to continue, would it be worth it? To know that my story is now incorrect? How can I go back to that? I can't erase that knowledge. I'll have to live with it forever, reliving its impossibility forever. I couldn't live that way. Is it better to shut the game down entirely? To willingly destroy all of my work? I don't know. What's the answer? What do I do? What do I do? What do I... No, I have to. I have to shut the game down. I have to. I have to.
Seems like the old narrator has experienced his own kind of anxiety.
Oh, I'm here. I'm still here. Here in this pile of rubbish. With you. You, who thought you were so clever. Now look where we are. My entire game is destroyed. It was the only thing in the world that was mine, and you've run it into the ground. What, did you think that would be funny? You just had to see?
I just had to see.
Upon you how important it was to be like Stanley. He actually knows how to do what I tell him to. He understands that if I say to do something, there's a damn good reason for it. That thought hadn't even occurred to you, had it? That there's a world outside of you? You're a child. Oh, my story. If you'd just gone through the door on the left, you would have seen it. There was a whole underground facility. You would have destroyed it and been victorious. It would have been so perfect. I worked so hard on it. I tried so hard to make... behave exactly as Stanley would. That means choosing responsibly and always putting the story first. I'm quite sure you'll be up to the task. Just follow my lead and you'll be fine. All right. When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Okay, so now that we have a sort of basic understanding of like what's causing us to make the decisions that we're making based on like kind of how we're going up and down in this chart and what our 2 predominant strategies are, let's talk about the relationship that we have with this narrator. The masks are off, right? I'm not Stanley. He's not just like a disembodied voice. Like he clearly has his own agenda, his own objective, and his own emotions. Which my evil therapist side says, if he has emotions, he has vulnerabilities. But my good-natured therapist side says, like, if he has emotions, then he can be helped. And there is actually some theory that we can apply to understand why the situation that we're in is causing that kind of reaction. Why someone so composed, seemingly composed, like the narrator here, had such a crash out. There's a perspective on, it's really about communication, but it helps us understand relationships as well, which is called transactional analysis. And the idea here is that like people generally occupy 3 sort of like mental states, or I guess we could call them ego states, which are parent, adult, and child. And we can look at this and say, okay, in any kind of communication dynamic, the relationship is going to activate one of these mental states for both you and the other person, and like the kinds of dynamics that play out, they can sort of be determined and understood by like what sort of arrangement is happening here. And the idea here is that like you have a collection of ideas and virtues and sort of like implicit rules about the world and how to behave. And a lot of those are templates of things that you've sort of like grown up hearing by your parents or other authority figures. This tends to come out in our own communication whenever we're talking to someone else in a way that like is characterized by these kinds of ideas. Like when we say things to people that are like, you should do this, you ought to do that. I think it's important for you to do this or think this way. Like they often can come in terms of commands. Commands or like standard setting, like we need to be responsible in this situation, right? If you ever find yourself like telling someone that, like you're basically occupying this ego state, and you are using that language because at some point, like the template of you as a child has heard that sort of thing and knows that it was effective for sort of like limit setting. So it's often the case that when we are like speaking in these sort of like situational defining moments or behavior defining moments, like when we're telling someone to do something or how something should be done, that like we're speaking to their child mental state and we expect them to listen. You also have your own child mental state, which is going to sound more like your impulses and desires that are not necessarily like rule oriented, but are more emotional. So this comes out in your communication when you say things like, I hate that I have to be at work today. Work sucks. The office space is so dull and drab and boring, and I don't get to do anything fun. In that sense, it depends on who you're talking to, but like, let's say that rather than, you know, sort of complaining about those sorts of things to someone who is going to tell you, yes, but it's important that you do your job correctly and show up on time. Like that's right. That would be more this way. But lots of times you're talking sort of parallel to someone else who's like, yeah, dude, work fucking sucks, right? Like, isn't our boss lame? Isn't it stupid that we have to do all this stuff? Like you find that there's quite a complementary exchange there. And then you have your adult, right? Which is kind of a moderation of the two, that's like a little bit more responsible, but is more flexible than the parent ego state, which like thinks in much more rigid terms of like what is correct, what should be done. The adult has more like personally held convictions, right? That will say, yeah, it's important that I be at work on time, but it's hard for me to be invested in my work when I don't feel like the environment is very lively. Like that's not a childish statement. Like that's not a template from your experience as a child. And it's not like a very sort of like simplistic dimension of what I should and shouldn't do or believe in the situation. It's kind of a more dynamic viewpoint that comes from like multiple values interacting with one another. Values on like punctuality, yes, but also like self-worth. So this tells us a lot about actually the relationship that we have with the narrator, right? Because the narrator very clearly trying to speak from a parental sort of ego state and imagining us being in sort of the child state, right? Like giving commands, telling us what to do, expecting that we do it on time, that we do it correctly. And when we go off track, sort of grabbing us by the hand and, you know, assuming that we are just ignorant or not knowledgeable about this. And so let me just put you back on the correct path. It is not a situation where a parent is speaking to an adult ego state that is sort of brushing up against like our individuality and our rationale. And for some parts of our early experience here, like we were responding as the child, right? We were like, fuck all that shit. You're going to tell me what to do? I'm going to click on everything. I'm going to go this opposite way. Like that natural instinct that comes out of us and says like, you think I should do this, but I don't want to. And I shouldn't have to just because you tell me to. I want to be my own person with my own beliefs and wants and desires. Like there is kind of a focus on individuality, but it's not a very composed one. And that is like a pretty common, natural like communication style for certain situations. Once our like sort of attempt to role play as Stanley wore off though, and we were no longer like occupying the mindset of a child in a sense, like I'm stepping more into like Brady's mind, you know, like I'm an adult, you know, I'm not a teenager. I'm not just going to follow directions if I don't feel like they are meaningful ones. And this is where you tend to get like communication breakdowns, because as people who are trying to communicate in this dynamic, but instead of me communicating back in the same way, which is a highly compatible thing, you tell me what to do and I refuse that, but you stay comfortable in that state of mind. I respond not speaking to you that way, but instead potentially as adult to adult or adult to child, right? And then this like wire crossing thing, like when I stand on my like convictions and from a very adult oriented perspective, say yes, but it's a value of mine to like make my own decisions and make sure I understand why I'm making them. this can aggravate the ego state of another person and have them then occupy the childish instinct to them that throws a fucking tantrum and is like, you know what, I'm just going to break my game and take my toys home. Partially because there is a fragile occupation of their own adult state that says like, oh, okay, you're your own person and I can't tell you what to do. I respect that you have your own convictions, right? That would be like us now meeting here. But instead, like I tried to talk to the narrator this way, and he assumed incorrectly that I was like coming at him as a parental transaction. So like then his natural defiance of like, well, if it's not going to go my way, then I don't want it to go anywhere at all, right? And you'll see this play out in like all kinds of relationships. You'll see it play out in workplace dynamics where like a healthy, leadership structure is like this, right? Like a good leader doesn't necessarily have to be someone who is laying down the law. At times, yes, if someone is occupying like their child mental state and is expressing these sort of like impulsive emotional statements, like I fucking hate my job, it's so stupid and everyone here is dumb and the things that they have us do are dumb, right? Then yes, like to counterbalance that, you actually want to respond more parentally, but kindly, right? The parental ego state that you hold largely depends, in this theory, on the template that you were given, right? So if your parents were kind and encouraging and not authoritative, like you're able to be like a compatible parental figure in that moment and say something like, yeah, look, Brady, I know it's tough to work in these conditions sometimes, you know, I don't always have the best time either, but you know, that's why we can lean on each other. And it's important that we, you know, get these things off our chest, but not let it defeat us. You know, let's get back on track here. That would be an appropriate response to someone who is being activated in their sort of child mental state. But a lot of times it can just be adult to adult, right? You both have your own values and convictions, and they are not always going to align with each other, but you don't necessarily just have to be in conflict either. Conflict tends to happen when you communicate to me this way, but I respond to you this way, and then you become this, and like it just kind of turns into a mess. So I come to you with a problem as like a leader, as your boss, and say, hey, it's important that you get this stuff done on time. I'm coming to you this way, right? Like saying, here's what you need to do, but I'm coming to you as your adult figure. I'm not commanding you as a child. But then maybe the other person comes with a response from their own parental state, and I'm saying, hey, you know, you should be focusing on this, and they're like, yeah, well, you should focus on this other person instead of me. And now we're kind of all over the place here, and then maybe I get defensive and like, okay, issues arise, right? Happens in romantic relationships where you want your partner to do something. Maybe you want to go somewhere with them, and you feel like you have to sort of corral them and say like, hey, you know, we haven't been out together in a while. Maybe we could do something together, right? Trying to communicate it as an adult to an adult. And their response is, yeah, but I never get time to myself. Why are you always telling me what to do? They interpret the neutral offering of collaboration as a command. This person then may become defensive and actually, okay, if you're targeting my parental ego state, like, that may activate it. And now, okay, well, yeah, the reason I always have to tell you what to do is because like, you don't really do anything unless I'm the one who initiates it. You came at me as from your child state. And so and you identified my parent. So I became my parent. I responded to that, but, and now you resent me for that. And you want to come to me as adults and say, well, I never asked you to like, you know, take the lead in this relationship. You know, you're just so stubborn. It's just your ego that makes you want to be in control, but you don't control me. Now I go on the attack and I become the parent, and I try to talk to you, to your child state. And I say something like, you know, if you really want to do that, why do you let me hold you back from that? And then adult, because I care about you. You know, I want to do things about you because like, you know, this relationship is important to me. Well, you don't act like it, like it just starts to sort of become a fucking mess because we're not responding appropriately to the things that we're hearing or starting from the right position in this communication structure. So the way that you work on this, though, like therapeutically, is like you would start paying attention to how you sound when you are occupying each of these states. So let's see, as we go forward a little bit more, how this dynamic plays out. Now that we both know that there is some fragility, I think, on the narrator side in this area. Like, he feels very confident presenting from like a parental role, assuming that that can enforce childish instincts in me to follow commands, right? To be Stanley, let's say. Maybe Stanley is actually, you know, the sort of name for my child ego state. And here we have the narrator. But when I respond as Brady, we get like this very childish version of the narrator who wants to break his toys and take his ball home. But feels very comfortable and on top of things when I follow commands.
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there.
And like, okay,
In case, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
you can see that like my little eye roll, like withheld in that eye roll is my perception that like, okay, I actually see the narrator like this, like all the time. I see the parental statements, knowing what's best for me to do as like kind of an artifice. And so maybe I'm having this kind of view and he's having this kind of view, which is putting us in conflict, right? Like, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll do what you say, just so that you're not upset. Much like a parent who is just withered from tantrums, but actually knows better deep down and just doesn't feel like it's even worth the challenge to try to correct them on that. And yeah, just let the child think they're in charge. Let's go forward with that idea. All right, I'm in the boss's office. You happy?
Stepping inside his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this, until he saw the door with a voice receiver next to it. Surely behind this door lay all the answers to his questions. And beyond all probability, he knew the passcode. He had seen it on his boss's computer just last week. Nightshark 115. Was this the code to open the door? Would it still work? There was only one way to find out. Stanley had been trained never to speak up, but now he would draw from within himself the courage to face the unknown. He drew a sharp breath and then spoke the code.
So that's an important tell as well to someone who is occupying that parental mental state, is those superlatives, always, never, right?
Stanley spoke the code. Nightshark 115. He spoke it into the receiver, right there on the wall.
The intonation as well, very parent coded, right? Like,
I'm sorry, is there a problem? You didn't mishear me, did you? Please speak the code into the receiver. Otherwise, we can't get on with the story. This is a crucial step.
and now my child is activated because I'm like, nope, nope.
Okay, fine, you're not going to do it, but you know what? It's pretty humiliating to bring you this far, only for you to suddenly decide you have better things to do. I asked you for this one single thing, for your respect. The kind of respect Stanley shows for his choices. He knows what it means to take a story seriously.
Oh my God, it's so parent coded.
Then why did you come here? You had a choice, you know. You could have gone through the door on the right. You could have done whatever the hell you wanted over there. Why did you come this way? Speak. Say something to me. Explain yourself, you coward. You...
What?
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left. Hello? Are you... Is everything okay? Stanley, please. I need you to make a choice. I need you to walk through the door. Are you listening to me? Can you hear me? Is everything all right? Stanley, this is important. The story needs you. It needs you to make a decision. It cannot exist without you. Do you understand me? Whatever choice you make is just fine. They're both correct. You cannot be wrong here. We can work together. I'll accept whatever you do. I simply need...
Child.
That step forward, please. Choose. Do something.
Incapable of dealing with me when I choose to be an adult.
And then you can never know. I need this. The story needs it. So, you hear me?
Pleading, placating.
Stanley, are you there? Okay. It's okay, I can wait. You need time to decide. Time to make sure your choice is correct. That is the...
Okay, wait, I'm just gonna pause it because I think the dialogue's gonna keep going. But okay, this is actually the sad part. This is the sad, not so humorous part of my analysis, which is like, what does it tell you that someone like the narrator has this template of what it means to get someone to do something, to insult their decision making? I told you already to do this. Their child state mirrors usually what they experienced. So consider this would be a real person, as there are people who do operate like this. That's a child who had a very hard upbringing. When that childish persona comes out and it's like, please, I'll do anything. It's okay. Like, what can I do? You can see that there was constant resistance coming from the parental side in their life that never motivated them based on real values, but motivated them based on like consequences. Like, if you don't do this, you're going to be in trouble. Why can't you just do this? What's wrong with you? I've explained this so many times. God, you can't get your act together. You know, all the other kids seem to be able to get this. Why can't you get this? Please, I'm trying to understand what you're saying. Like, I'll do anything. What do I need to do? Just pleading for like clear instructions and for comfort, any amount of comfort to come through, besides just commands. What's so interesting about like this model of communication is when someone's child state is activated, it's a direct reflection of how they experienced parents in their lives and how they learned to just do enough so that they were no longer in trouble, but never actually learned like, you know, the good values to take care of themselves and make their own decisions. They experienced a parental figure who didn't value the child's own decision making, or discouraged their curiosity, insulted or blamed them when they did something that was outside the very rigid commands. And so when that person who experienced that like rigid parenting style gets disappointed in something, they also don't know how to like respond healthily from their child state. They have a very hard time being an independent, you know, adult type person because there is just such a conflict between this relationship that they experienced.
Best choice. That's all right. I'll wait for you to decide what's the right thing to do. Take as much time as you need.
Oh, it's actually heartbreaking. Okay, we're gonna pause here. But going forward, I do have some, you know, I try to hold a place for understanding. You know, when someone comes at me from their commanding parental state and is like, Brady, can you get your shit together, please? How many times do I have to tell you, right? Not to have my own child state react in the way that they expect, right? The parent who makes those commands likes the child who's like, please, I'll do anything, please. Just stop yelling at me. Yeah, that gets results. I try to hold a space for this person that like, oh, there is a very wounded child on the other side of that highly convinced authoritative parental state of mind that they try to operate in. And why is the reason for that? Well, because it's powerful. For a child who grew up like that and was never empowered, never encouraged, never praised for their curiosity or decision making or independence, of course, what they learned is how I become powerful, I tell other people what to do. That's what I learned from my parents. I've seen what it did to me, and you know what? They whipped me into shape. You can even find people who will convince themselves that this is a strong way to motivate others because, yeah, well, you know, my parents were hard on me, so and it worked. Look how I've gotten my shit together. That's how I will motivate people now too. And so in the therapeutic process, we are trying to discover what would it mean to access a more nuanced, less one-dimensional variant of this person's perspective that has its own values, right? That are not like the fragile, sensitive, unnurtured values of their childish experience, and are not the rigid, commanding, narrow ideas that their parents convinced them was how you show power to other people. And that, my friends, takes a lot of work. And it takes insight. It takes insight from the person to first understand, what do I sound like when I'm doing this? How do I make other people feel when I act like that? What does it feel like to me when someone shows me a parental figure that is not commanding, but is more nurturing, you know? One that says like, hey, Stanley, I know you're having a rough time, and I know it's tough to make a decision, but I believe you know how to make the right one. This person with like kind of a wounded child, they don't even know how to respond to that. They don't identify that as a parental figure. They identify that maybe like as a kind of a weakness, a passiveness, when what they're really hearing is like what a more self-respecting and child-respecting parent should sound like, or can sound like. So we've got a complicated relationship with the narrator here, and a complicated relationship with ourselves. I'm really curious to see where this goes from here. And although I may brush up against the narrator, there may be some friction going forward. These moments that we've seen already, like kind of, you know, when we've taken a step back, like where we got to see what is happening almost in third person. Yeah, I do have some sympathy for that. Up to a point. Up to the point that the person shows willingness to change and a desire to balance that perspective and to say, hey, look, I have to come to a place where I say, I don't like when I sound like this. I didn't like how my dad or my mom commanded me to do things, and I know it made me feel bad, and I can see that it makes other people feel bad. How can I change this? To me, that would show a lot of investment in their development. So I hope we get to see some of that. All right, that's all we're gonna do for today. And next time we'll see where this goes. Got a couple other ideas brewing in terms of where I think the sort of narrative is heading and our place in it. But for those of you who are just joining us, welcome to the channel. As always, I have a lot of thanks for my community for recommending these types of games, because they're the perfect place to explore lots of psychological subjects, and in sort of a fun, abstract way in a game, but ones that really apply to our actual lives. So it's always my mission and yeah, my pleasure to try to demonstrate some of those things so that you can go away from these videos, not just well, hopefully having fun, and if not learning something about yourself, being curious to learn something about yourself. I want to equip you with the language to tell better stories about your own lives so that you can say things like, I get really frustrated when I feel my childish instincts responding to someone authoritative, and like, what does that pattern tell me about my life? how can I look at that situation and develop more convictions that feel more self-respecting, so that I have better self-esteem, and I know how to respond to people who are bullies or commanding or whatever. I want you to have that language, so we'll keep going in this direction. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this first episode of Stanley Parable, and I will see you for the next one very soon. Take care.